All right, now that we know how to create an XML object, let's figure out how to save it to disk. So what we have here is on line 8, we have the object in a variable, and we need to get that variable onto the disk so we can view it later. So let's create a function to do this. So let's call this function save as XML, and we'll pass in a name to start with, and then we'll pass in the XML. We could call this map, but let's call it XML because we want this to be somewhat general. And so the first thing we have to do is figure out how to parse this name, because what we will do is we'll pass in the document's full path, and then we'll use that to get the folder the document's in, and we'll save that XML file to the same folder that the document, or later on that the book is in. So let's figure out how this call would work. So we would say save as XML, and we'd pass in the document's name, and then we would pass in the map, and those would be our two arguments. So when we get in here and we see the name, let's figure out how we would parse that. So what we can do is this is going to be, well, let's see what it displays. Let's just see what it displays, and then we'll figure out how to parse it. So let's run this, and this should give us the full path to our file. Yeah, so this gives us the full path. So what we're going to want to do is we'll drop the file name, and then we'll add the name of our XML file onto the end of it, so it'll get saved in that same folder. So let's go back to the script, and so what we can do is use a regular expression. And we can, what we'll do is we'll just change the existing variable. So we'll say name equals name, and then we will replace, and we'll use a regular expression here. So we'll say any character that's not a backslash. So we're going to go any character that's not a backslash, one or more, that's what the plus is, and then at the end of the, up to the end of the file name. So it's going to just grab the stuff that's in the last part of the path, which would be the file name, and then we're going to replace that with the file name we want. And I usually start these with an underscore so they float to the top of the the file system, the folder, so I can find them easy. So we're going to say underscore. And since we're looking for markers, we'll call this marker map.xml. And let's see what that gives us. Let's see if that's what we really want. So we'll save that, put a semicolon on there, and we'll just display it. And then if that's correct, then we have something to create here. So let's run that. Yeah, so it's in the same folder as this document that we're running it on, and it's called underscore marker map.xml, and that's fine. That's what we'll do. So again, this is all arbitrary. You can make it up. You can call it whatever you want, but we're just trying to find something that makes sense to us for this particular script. So now that we have a name, we can create a new file. So let's create a variable. Let's create a file variable, and then we'll say file equals new file, and then we'll pass in the name. So this will make a new file on disk with that name. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to make sure we set its encoding to UTF-8, because by default it'll probably use a Windows encoding. So we want to make sure that it's UTF-8 for our purposes, and then UTF-8, which is fine. And then what we actually want to do, we want to open this file for writing. So we're going to say open, and we're going to put in a W, and that means writing. And that means if this file already exists, the W parameter will actually overwrite it. It'll actually clear out the file and make a new one. Then what we're going to do is we're going to write our XML header. And so we're going to say file write, and then we're going to say we're going to add the normal header. And actually we can copy this out of Oxygen. Let's do that. So we'll just copy this here. And because this has inner quotes, we'll have to deal with that. But let's paste it in here. This will get us started. Like that. And so we'll use single quotes out here because we have double quotes inside. So we have to use double quotes or single quotes outside, or we could reverse it. We could use double quotes outside and then these would be single quotes inside. Now what we can do is we can do a little shortcut here. We can put in a \r, and that'll give us a new line, and then we can actually add the XML. We can concatenate the XML, so this should give us what we want. And then finally what we have to do is we have to close the file. So we say File, Close. So now if this runs correctly, what we should end up with is an XML file on the disk that has this file name and has the content of our XML map. So let's see if that works. Let's save the changes and we'll go back to FrameMaker and we'll go ahead and run this. And this will be silent because we're not displaying any dialog box. Now let's right click here and say Open Containing Folder, and there's our marker map. Now what we'll do here, let's just check it. It should have some content in it, so we'll open it with Oxygen, which we have open. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so we got our basic map. We know we can write it to disk. Now obviously we need more content, we need more information, but at least now we can write it to disk. And when we're using Oxygen or Notepad++, we can actually leave this open and continue to overwrite it, and it'll refresh in here, and we'll show you that in our next video.